This is Warren Vanderhill with the Center for Middletown Studies project on deindustrialization and economic development. The date is February 13th, 2008, and today I'm interviewing Jim Riggle with American Electric Power at his office. Jim, I want to begin by thanking you for your willingness to participate in the project, and I'd like to begin with a kind of general question. Specifically, what has been your involvement in Muncie area economic development? And I'm looking at a time frame here.
Well, Warren, it's really varied over the years. There's been a lot of changes in the electric utility business over the last 15, 20 years. Probably in the mid-'80s, we found ourselves at a point where we were actually doing some marketing of our product. And you kind of think, well, why would an electric company be doing marketing? You know, they're a monopoly. Well, it's because we have a lot of money invested in the capital that provides the product that we sell, which is electricity. And the amount of money that we spend is just enormous to supply the needs of all the customers that are out there. And it's not like you can shut down part of a power plant to make it work for a little while to satisfy all the needs. It's running all the time, and so it's all, and you can't store electricity. So we got into the part where how can we utilize all of this product that we have at all the time, especially during the off hours at night and things, which we call off peak. And we got to the point where we said, okay, let's go out and try to market some energy products that use electricity, and also try our best to bring in some users of electricity at that time. Because we certainly had a lot of capacity. You were starting to look at that time as steel mills were starting to have problems. The industrial age as a whole was beginning to have problems, and so we could certainly see our demand for our product going down. So we thought we need to, even though we were kind of touching economic development prior to that, it was at that point that we thought we really need to do something in greater detail.
Had you been involved with economic development efforts elsewhere before you came here?
No, I haven't. Speaking of the steel mill that I talked about, that's the business that I came from. And so I came from the steel industry, and I came to the electric utility business because I thought it was going to be a secure industry to work in, and over the years it certainly hasn't been the case.
And compared to steel?
Well, compared to steel, probably have much more so.
As far as your time in Muncie, you mentioned before we began the taping part of this session that you came here in the early 1990s. Once you get to Muncie, what particular economic development initiatives have you been involved with?
Well, I've been here a couple of times. One, I mean, just kind of maybe, I was here in the early 90s and left for several years and came back in 2000. So, there's kind of a lapse there. First time I was here, it was probably more in the marketing arena than it was in the economic development end of things. So, it was probably much more involved in that. Not until I came here in 2000 did I actually have the responsibilities for being involved in economic development. And I might add at that point, I guess, is that during the 80s and the 90s, we had a complete staff for just Indiana, Michigan Power's involvement of AEP. We had probably about 7 or 8 people involved only in economic development. In the late 90s is when that started to kind of change. The industry itself was starting to look different. You had the Enrons come through.
I had a little bit of that stock.
And what it was is that you thought, Enron was a national branding company. They were going to go out and provide choice, just as the telephone industry had done. Give people, even though there's one set of wires coming into your house for a telephone, you could pick your supplier of this. So everyone thought this is what was going to be happening. So that took away your monopoly aspects of an electric utility. So you started thinking differently at that time. Why am I going to keep working on economic development to bring people to a certain area when I may not be the supplier of that product?
Yeah.
So it started taking a chance. So we started downsizing our economic development staff to where actually we went down to just having one person left to do economic development for all of Indiana and Michigan in our service territory in about the year 2000.
Yeah.
We understood then the local communities were so disheartened by that decision that they kind of voiced some concerns, and we understood the reasons that they did. So we started bringing back a little bit and just adding the responsibilities of economic development to kind of our external relations, our governmental relations. Part of the job.
Now, are those mostly the people who work on economic development for I&M or AEP in a larger sense now? They also do governmental kind of things?
It kind of varies throughout AEP. We're in 12 different states, and so we really have about, there's 7 operating companies, so there's really 7 different ways of looking at it. So some areas such as our Arkansas, Louisiana, Virginia, Ohio, they're more they have more personnel, more resources available for economic development than maybe what we do here right now. And that is because this really hasn't been a growing area. So they've kind of looked at trying to put the resources that they wanted to have in those particular areas. Even though we're starting to realize right now, it's kind of when things are down is really the times you probably need to be putting more into your economic development efforts than staying away from it. So it's really just it's a balancing act of our company trying to do the right things.
Have you been involved? I know you're involved, and we want to talk a bit about this with Vision 2011. Were you involved with Vision 2006?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Well,
yes.
Could you tell me a little bit about your involvement in that? I mean, and I'm really talking about that in a kind of plural way, which is to say your role in both Vision 2006 and now with the upcoming Vision 2011.
Yeah, my first experience with the 2006 Vision 2006 was probably just as a resource to them. They were coming to us looking for financial obligation to meet their 5-year plan that they had. It was at that point that we were going through this shuffle of resources, and we went, Warren, I think going from about $25,000 a year for Delaware County in financial aid down to $5,000 a year in 2006 for the Vision 2006 program. And that was certainly a blow to them. It was a blow to us, but it was just budget cuts that we had to take from someplace.
These are basic corporate decisions?
These are corporate decisions based on what we're doing, and them indicating to us maybe economic development is not the most important thing to us at this particular time.
Okay, where are you now as a company with Vision 2011?
We still have our same financial contribution going in at about $5,000 a year. Plus, we work as a resource to them. One of the biggest things that any prospect is going to look at is energy, and it's the highest cost item that they have to look at. So we've been fortunate with AEP, especially here at Indiana Michigan Power. We have the lowest. We're ranked in the lowest seven states that rank in the lowest in the nation. Indiana is one of those. Indiana Michigan Power within Indiana has the lowest rates of any investor-owned utility. There are some REMCs out there, but and we're probably even cheaper than most of the REMCs in providing our cost to serve. And right now we are just filed for a rate case. We haven't had a rate case since 1993, and so it's been 15 years. We have applied for one right now, and with that we have asked that resources that we would put toward economic development be included in the rate base. And that is because we feel like it is a it's an asset to our customers, because the more people that use our power, the better off everyone is. The better off we are, the better off the customers are.
Yeah.
And we feel like that we can get back into this and do more to bring people to the area, and we're kind of we have our own reasons for it. We're wanting to sell more of our product,
Right.
but also we want to see the community do better.
Okay.
And that's something that when you have a monopoly and you're like,
Right.
it's like you said, we're
Yeah.
trying to be all things to all people, and
Yeah.
and it's difficult at times, but everyone are our customers, so we feel like we have an obligation to help improve the community. And of course, you know, now with all the things going on with property taxes and all
Yeah,
that,
right.
anything we can do
Yeah.
to improve. So it's a challenge before us right now to
Yeah.
see if we can include more things, but be able to make some profit out of it from our investors. That if we do take a spec building, for instance,
Right.
we used to finance spec buildings for the local communities. And what we would do is loan them the money to do this at no charge to them. All they would have to do is maybe pay the interest for a few years. And then there would be a time when it's sold that they would just agree
Sure.
to pay us back the money. That was a big help to the communities, but it was certainly a burden on us. There was money that could be invested in other things that was making a return on the investment for that money. So you're getting into today's world where return on your investment is certainly more important than what maybe it was in the past. So we're saying we would like to get back to some of these things that we can do to help through economic development, but we would just like to be able to make a little bit of a return on our investment.
Think of initiatives that have taken place here in the past several years while you've been involved with the vision programs and also with the chamber. What economic development initiatives have worked in Muncie, in your view, in recent years? And of course, I want to do a follow-up, which is to ask you why you think they've worked.
Well, I think a lot of it has worked. You know, economic development is a strange thing. It's more about relationships and the integrity of the job that the economic development people do. That's why it's so important. I think just recently we had where the paper announced that, you know, a prospect was looking at a certain area for an entertainment industry. And it just so happens that the newspaper gets a hold of this, and by some way or method, and you know, that's their business, is to get news. But you know, the question we have is, you know, is it news before it actually happens?
Right.
And what happens is that people looking at property, you know, if they know someone is willing to start paying some big bucks for some money, it's going to make a difference in what this company can buy, can make an investment in this land for. So if it gets out and it's public, it creates a problem. And I know a lot of people don't understand some and don't think that, you know, a lot of these issues should be private, but that's the way businesses make decisions and go into different locations. They want it private until they're ready to announce it.
Yeah. So they can get the best deal on the land.
That's right.
In this case.
Yeah. And I would have to say that Delaware County, through Terry Murphy and Dan Allen, have done a wonderful job at trying their best to keep that integrity level.
Yeah.
And Terry does an outstanding job of trying to build relationships with these site selectors. And you know, a lot of people wait for something to come to them. I think Delaware County is out there now trying to promote themselves and have people look at this particular area.
I would assume that because of what you do here, that there is always a point along the line when a prospect becomes quite interested in coming here where they're going to seek you out, I guess, and find out, okay, they might want to talk to the university, they might want to talk to the school system, they might want to talk to the healthcare people, but they also want to talk to Jim Riggle.
Yes.
And why might that be?
And that is the energy price. It's probably one of the largest concerns that a new company has, is how much are we going to pay for our energy.
Okay.
The kinds of businesses that you kind of look for these days, manufacturing is certainly large energy users. But then again, you're talking about agricultural business these days. The ethanol thing that's taking place in East Central Indiana right now, those are large energy consumers. So the price of electricity is very important to them. So what will happen during that time is that I as Terry Murphy builds his case to try to have someone come, he'll bring someone like myself in to talk to the prospect, give them rates as to what we're looking for, try to find out what it is exactly, because there's all kinds of different needs when you're talking about energy. And so the upfront cost for large energy users are very substantial also. It's a large investment on our part to provide electricity to some of these users. So it's very important that we're involved. But at the same time, we have the, I guess, the respect of Terry and the group of knowing that we're not going to be out talking and telling people about what's going on.
I want to switch this a little bit and get more specific with you. What do you think are the three, and I just picked three out of the air, you could give me 12. What are the three most important things that you think Muncie should address in its efforts to foster economic development? What do we really have to do here? What's the big three?
My number one, Warren, is a cultural change in the workforce.
Okay.
We have a workforce that has been used to the manufacturing base being here, which has not required a higher level of education in the past to make some great money. Those days are over.
Okay.
And but I don't think that a lot of the people in the community believe that. They see that the work is maybe going somewhere else or something, so that they think there's this possibility they could still stay here. Well, the world is flat now. I don't think that anyone would challenge that anymore, but I don't think the days of, as I mentioned to you earlier, I used to work in the steel industry. Every 7th year that you work for the major steel company, you had 15 weeks of vacation permitted to. Now that's a quarter of a year.
Yeah.
So those are kind of benefits, and I paid zero money for when my kids were born. From the health aspect for the benefits. So all of those things have just changed. So the people that are growing up that are my age, the baby boomer group, that's what they're used to. So they have not instilled anything differently on their children, except what they have known. That's all they have known through their life is that you can go to high school, get out, and get a great job at a manufacturing plant. And I think that they still believe that that's possible for even their kids. Hopefully, a lot of people are starting to realize that that is not the truth. It's not reality anymore. And we've got to change in East Central Indiana that mindset to where you have to further your education. Even after you get a good job, you still have to continue learning. You just don't know what's coming around tomorrow. It's just continuous learning all the time because people are always trying to improve themselves.
Just to take that one step further before you give me your other two, how about your own workforce? I mean, what do you find in terms of hiring people here?
And that is a challenge that we're going through right now. It is really not. Last year, we brought in about 50 people for about 7 different openings we had with our line crews. Even with the line crew, you think, well, all they do is they go out and they climb a pole and they stick some wires up and they do it.
It's a little more involved than that.
It's a lot more involved than that.
Yeah,
so
right.
your math and science and English and everything are so critical to the people doing the job. And what's happened is we bring in so many people to just take our written test to see if they can meet the minimum standards of what we require with that. And we had only about 20% of those that went through to the next round.
Jeez.
And
that's pretty grim.
That is grim.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's a bit of reality for us in this area, right?
Yeah. But the challenge is a little bit different than putting a door handle on a car,
It is.
as far as what you need to do to be a number one line crew person.
That's very true. You know, it's a very dangerous job.
Yeah.
And you have to know what you're doing. And to do that, you have to be able to learn. You have to have the written communication skills. You know, a lot of the math and science skills and really, it's not like you would go to a 4-year college, and it's just really a lot of technical training. I think
Sure.
we're certainly hoping that people, and from my understanding, Ivy Tech is beginning to get record enrollments. I'm hoping that that's part of the culture change that I would hope to see in our workforce here. So.
Okay, so if workforce is number one, what would you list as the second greatest challenge that Muncie has to address in its efforts to foster economic development?
Well, number one was so overwhelming. I'm glad for number 2 and 3. Number 2 is probably what I would say is probably the quality of life in the area. We have an outstanding area here, in my opinion, for quality of life. But it seems like we have to do most of our selling to the people that are here, to let them know the advantages of what's actually here. It's if you have visitors coming through town and they would stop and ask someone what is there to do here, most people say there's nothing to do here. But we all know that that's entirely not true. And it's a lot of the things that people that come from some of the more from the bigger areas that you think of when you're thinking of culture areas, your Chicago's and things like that. There's always things going on there, but there's always things going on here too. Okay. It's just that we don't do a good job of promoting that, probably, and getting people involved and knowing that these are things that we should be promoting to visitors and even to the people that are living here now. So quality of life, I think, is a critical factor. And we need to do some improvement in the quality of life that's here. And I think we're starting, you know, the trails and a lot of, you know, Minnetrista, the Children's Museum, those kind of things that I think young families like to become involved in. And you hear stories a lot of times of young families coming back because they do understand that this is a good area for them. So quality of life.
Is there a number 3 that makes your list?
Warren, it probably is. Let's go on to the next one.
Okay, sure. Okay. This really has to do more with recruiting in a sort of, I guess, generic fashion. And the question I'd pose to you is, right now, here we are, in the winter 2008, do you see Muncie as a place that's a hard sell or an easy sell for economic development or trying to get people to come here?
It's a good question. It's a hard sell only because you're competing against a larger group of challengers anymore. You're not just, it's almost, as we've said in different ways, as Indiana's not competing against some of the different states. They're competing against the world in all this. So in my opinion, it's much more difficult today to bring prospects to an area. And the rebates and tax incentives and things like that, they're really no longer incentives. If you don't do them, they're not even going to open your door to look at you. So it's not like those kind of things are incentives. You have to do things to get yourself exposed. And I think we're probably going to talk about this in a little bit, and that's marketing yourselves. And I'm a firm believer in marketing, and resources are few. And all of the local government and areas are having a very different... They're all struggling and having the resources available to do this. So I think we'll probably get to this through our conversation. But I think the aspect of a regional approach to marketing your area is what is necessary today.
Okay. Yeah, this is to push this envelope a little bit more, but in the time you've been here, since you mentioned, as many other people I've interviewed have, that this is a hard sell, do you get the feeling with things like the Vision 2011 program that it might possibly become a little easier place to sell? I mean, is that one of the goals of trying to make this a more appealing area?
And it certainly is, and it's trying to get your message out. You have to have
Yeah.
the resources to get your message out. I know there's pros and cons to everything. You know, a lot of people don't understand the trips to Japan,
Yeah, right.
Korea, maybe Europe, those kind of things. There are different cultures out there. People are not like us, and relationships to some of those people are are more important today. We think business decisions are more important than relationships. Sometimes I think as a whole in our country, and who's wrong and who's right, I'm not going to say, but I respect the people who think that relationships are very important.
Yeah.
And it just seems to be that those people are not here; they're somewhere else. So you have to have the money to go to them, to see them, to speak to them, to provide them with materials that show the advantages of what you have. And I think all those are important.
If you're thinking of either locating or relocating a business in this area, of, I guess to use a generic term, conducting economic activity in the Muncie area, as we are right now, what do you think are the most appealing things about a company, organization, use whatever term you wish, saying, okay, I think this area has what I might want? What are some of those things?
Well, I think one of the things that people want are resources, and that's being in the energy business.
Yeah.
Energy is one of those needs that they have, so that's certainly something that someone's looking at, a part of the country where the resources are at a reasonable level. And so therefore you kind of get to the cost of living aspect of this too. And you look at the cost of living in the Midwest versus either coast, and you know, when people move to this area in terms of housing and things, I think they've died and gone to heaven. You know, they can buy 10 times the amount of house that they had. That, you know, the groceries are cheaper. You know, all the things that are involved in a healthy lifestyle are just more reasonable here. But of course, some of it has to do with the pay. I mean, maybe sometimes the pay is a little less here because and so it's kind of hard to overcome that at times with the wages
Okay.
that might be expected here.
When the large corporations that have been here consider, and in some cases have gone beyond that and closed their local facilities, as you look at these decisions, what kind of local conditions do they generally cite for saying, okay, we're not going to operate this plant in Muncie, Indiana anymore? Or maybe it isn't really Muncie, maybe it's something that's much broader than that.
Well, I will have to say that the problem that we have in this particular area is, due to the fact that we've had a strong manufacturing base over the years. What has been coming along with that is union labor.
Okay.
And so people still look at the high cost of labor that is associated with a union shop.
Okay.
And the benefits are associated with that. So right off the bat, that just gives someone hesitation to even look at the area because they are afraid that they're going to organize and that's a situation that maybe it's not, they don't believe it's best. They can go to another part of the country and not have to put up with that.
Right. Okay. I told you we were going to touch on this question, so here's the part to touch on it, and that is regionalism. And the specific question, I guess, would be what role Muncie should play as a center, which is right up the alley of what you do here, for a larger East Central Indiana area, and what efforts have been undertaken toward that end?
Well, regionalism is kind of a four-letter word to some people, and I certainly understand that. We
I'm talking about it geographically.
Exactly. Yeah. Everyone is so afraid that what we're talking about at the beginning here, and what my thinking of regionalism is just the gathering of resources to promote the area.
Okay.
And to make people that are out there looking for an area want to look at this particular area. Talk about our workforce, what we have to provide, the cost of living, the quality of life, all of those things that we can promote in this area. And it's kind of hard to do that on the resources that the local communities have. So if you pull all of these resources together, it's probably easier to do that. Now, what some people are afraid is going to happen is that someone else is going to know about your private business through somehow. Things aren't going to be as private as they once were. Well, and I think Roy Budd, who heads up our regional marketing efforts here, would tell you, he's not trying to close any sales. Right. He's trying to open up the doors and let people come in. He's not talking to them about deal making. He leaves that up to the local individuals.
Okay.
But I still think there's some people that are just a little leery of that, just by thinking that, if I only know about it, no one else does, I'm not going to have any competition close by.
Okay.
So I think that's a challenge that's faced with regionalism.
Yet Muncie, I think, sometimes is viewed by these outlying communities with suspicion. And I think you can see this with some of the land situations that the city has gotten itself involved with our neighbors,
Yes.
especially to the west, one might say.
Yes.
So I mean, I still think that there has to be an East Central Indiana approach to some of this, which is certainly right up your alley because of what you do.
Right.
But yet I think the point that I would emphasize, and if you disagree, please say so, it's always fraught with a lot of suspicion of what the big guy is trying to do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And you run into that too.
I certainly do. Certainly do. There is that suspicion, and it would be just recently here. There was Nestle moved, came over to Anderson, Indiana.
Yeah. Prominently on the interstate.
Yes, prominently on the interstate. And then you had IBM announce the call center over in Delville, which is Delaware County.
Yeah.
You've got these two areas that are along an interstate.
Right.
You understand the challenges, the competition that is involved there. I just wish we would take it to a different approach and work together to say, what can we, blue sky thinking, what can we do differently than we're doing today that will enable us to work together on these kind of projects for both communities?
Yeah.
And I think that this regional approach is just the first step, and it's a very small one, in trying to get to that in some day and time.
Well, I think about that with how pleased a lot of the people that I've interviewed so far on this project are with A, Jarden leaves downtown, B, Jarden doesn't go to Indianapolis North Side, C, Jarden goes out to that former outlet mall where Sherry Labs happens to be, and A.E. Boyce, and they've made that into a really thriving enterprise. So, I mean, I look upon that as a success, but yet a lot of people who are more, shall we say, town-oriented say, well, yeah, but they all left. Well, they didn't. They just went down the road, I guess, is the way I'd look at it. I don't.
And they did, and that was much better than having them go to Indianapolis, because that would have probably involved relocating families out of our area, which is another hit on the property tax issue. So, and I think we're trying. This property tax issue right now is beginning to see some of the aspects of this, because some people are calling right now for some consolidation.
Yeah.
And that's what regionalism kind of can lead to, is some consolidation and some things that makes our approach more efficient. It's just the outcomes have to be able to. You have to be able to say we can share the successes with someone else. That's involved in this venture.
I want to turn this on its head a little bit. Are there any economic development initiatives that the community has been involved with that have specifically been able to assist your company? I'm looking at AEP, I&M as being on the receiving end of something that might be for the greater benefit of your company from the city. Well, not so much the city, but really maybe from a chamber initiative or a vision initiative or something like that.
You know, of course, the more successful they are in what they're doing, the better chance that we have of selling more of our product. There's no doubt about that. We try to take it even a step further and seek their assistance in these kind of things. We have you're talking about the Borg Warners and the New Venture Gears and the ABBs and things that have gone out of business.
Yeah.
We still have assets at those locations.
Oh, I didn't know that.
We still have substations.
Oh, yeah, right.
That
Yeah.
provided the power to those companies. The one area that when we have resources available like that, we would like to see someone come in and utilize those. But what is more interesting to everyone is going out, just as we talked about earlier. Muncie doesn't like the fact that some new company or something look outside city limits. It's because land's cheaper, the property is cheaper, the resources are just more reasonable there than what they are in the city. But we have to look at building new equipment to serve those.
Right.
And that, when you're talking about a substation, you're talking $5-6 million, which we don't really get a return on that for several years before we start making a profit on our initial outlay. But we have an obligation to serve, so we have to do it. We can't tell them no. We won't do this. So what we would like to see is, and we're getting some assistance, but it's just as we mentioned a while ago, you can't tell customers to move into the city. You also can't tell customers to move where existing facilities are to serve their needs. There are other things, and really there's really not any incentives. The price of electricity is the same whether or not they move out there or move where it helps us. So we are trying our best to come up with some incentives to make these people want to move, maybe provide a break in the price of electricity if they would move to one of these locations.
Well, this is a question born out of my own lack of knowledge here, and that is because I hadn't thought about these substations. But when you think of places like Westinghouse and New Venture Gear and places of that sort, what ultimately happens to those substations?
Well, the one at ABB is still there, hoping all these years, hoping that someone's going to come in and open that, and the facility. That's a selling point. Even that the facilities are already there. It usually takes if you're going somewhere, and a substation it takes a minimum of a year to get yourselves ready. So the time investment is kind of an advantage there for someone, but they're sitting there and it's going in. It's kind of like what we talked about at the very beginning, where you can't store electricity.
Right.
So it's not like you're able to bottle it up and say, okay, we'll bring it out and use it later.
So if you go into a place like ABB right now,
yes,
and this is going to sound dumb because I don't know this, and you're the professional, you could turn on the switch.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can power them up tomorrow.
Oh gosh.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're right. I mean, that is a selling point to somebody who could use a facility like that.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
And but if they go somewhere to build a new facility, it takes the time for them to build it. Plus, it takes the time. Sometimes we're not ready, but times they're ready, and so that causes some conflict. It may make someone decide not to come to the area.
Right. This is a little bit of a switch, but it's based on our own personal relationship, and that is that you've been quite active, both personally and on behalf of your company, in environmental initiatives.
Right.
And I'd just like you to comment on that. I mean, do you see this as one part of economic development in this area?
We really do.
Okay.
You know, the environment is such, you know, a lot of people look, you know, we're in Indiana, we're 90-some percent coal.
Yeah.
Our company's probably about 70% because we have a nuclear
Right.
plant up in
Yeah.
Michigan.
Well, I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, so we're a little better off than that. But you know, over the years, the challenge that we have is everyone wants cheap energy.
Right.
It just so happens that coal is the cheapest energy that you can find right now. But there's problems that have developed with the environment over that.
Mm-hmm.
We have recognized that, and we're trying our best to address it. A lot of people will find it strange. We want environmental regulations.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think we're fighting them, but we'd like to have them the way we would like, you know, that would suit us best, and just as anyone in business would,
Right.
you know, that. But there's where the way it is today, there are no concrete environmental regulations concerning this. So.
Yeah.
And the need to build, our generation needs to be expanded over the years. So you can think of all of these different things that are coming along these days that require energy. Not only from a generation standpoint as to where it's going to be, but how we're going to get it from one place to another.
Yeah.
If you think about the interstate system over the years, it has continually, you know, they've maintained it, they've expanded it, and still we say, well, wouldn't it be nice if we had more?
Yeah.
We have not done anything in our country to expand our transmission capabilities. It's nothing more speaking. In West Virginia, we tried to get some. There was a need in Virginia for us to take some to have access to get the energy to Virginia. You have the Appalachian Mountains there.
Right.
It took us, we had the need to do it. It took us over 15 years to just be able to get the permission and go through all the regulations, policies, and everything to be able to get there. We just can't continue like that.
No.
There has to be some laws and policies and things that tell everyone right now, you know, what we can and we can't do. It's too expensive to just go out. It's just like, that's why people quit building nuclear plants.
Yeah.
You can't just go out and start building one. You know, they're too expensive to have someone just come by next week and say, no, we're shutting you down.
You know, this is again a more personal question. Do you think, from your professional perspective, that nuclear power still has a future?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I think we still have more work to do to ensure that safeguards are there for this. We've learned a lot from Russia. Safeguards aren't there, and you know we've been very fortunate that we haven't had those kind of things happen here. But you know, as time goes on, I think we're going to continue to find new ways of doing things. It's just that we all have to realize that some of the new ways cost more.
Okay. Yeah.
And if we're willing to pay more for that product, then most of the time we don't have a problem. Most people don't want to pay more for the products than what they have to pay.
True.
So we get that in balance there.
Yeah. Last question really gets back to where we began our conversation, and that is, as you look forward to Vision 2011, what are Jim Riggle's fondest hopes that Vision 2011 might be able to accomplish?
Well, of course, you know, you would hope that certainly the number of jobs that are created come to fruition, and but it's more than that. It's I think Vision 2011. Some of the importance of that is it made us look outside of our typical manufacturing eyesight. We need to start thinking outside of the box, and we're starting to do some of those things. I know we're working right now with data centers.
Right.
That's something that is an advantage to us because we have, we can promote the fact that we have low electrical energy costs. Those are huge factors in those kind of things. A lot of them are up by the hydropower areas up in Washington and things like that, where hydropower is so cheap. But we're right there with them now in terms of the price that we can do. And ever since 9/11, people want to kind of get out and away from the urban areas, major urban areas in the country, because these are the places that need to be safeguarded and can certainly rely on not having any problems with terrorism, security, or anything like that, or the weather, or anything like that. So,
especially the weather.
yeah, but that's something that I think we're beginning to look. And what I like about it is that we've involved. This thing with Ball State and the community, I just don't think words cannot describe how important those partnerships are for economic development areas.
Well, if you hadn't said that, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, well, there's not too many areas in the country that say they have a major university in their community. And and we're so well known for the media aspects of this. So there's all kinds of just different viewpoints that you can start looking at by taking advantage of the research and things that Ball State is going to be doing in the next few years.
As you look back on the times plural that you've been in Muncie, do you think the role of the university and its relationship with things like economic development has changed?
I think they have improved somewhat.
Okay.
I have certainly seen where the two sides realize that there are benefits to both sides.
Okay.
I believe probably most of the benefits I think are on the community side. Ball State provides most of the advantages to this. It's just, but I think the community needs to open their arms open, have their arms open more, and welcome that into the communities. There's a lot of people at the university who have a lot of good ideas and are somewhat of risk takers also.
Well, I think there comes a certain obligation, which wasn't the case when I came here in the late 1960s, with being the largest employer in a community. If someone had said to me in 1968, 1969, you're at Ball State, largest employer is Warner Gear, Chevy, places like that, but you know what? By the turn of the century, you're going to be the largest employer in Muncie. I would have thought the person was a candidate for a padded cell. So just think of how that's changed significantly. How about the health system? How do you think that the Cardinal Health System Bowl Memorial Hospital figures into this equation?
Oh, very important.
Okay.
The baby boomers coming up now. Health is a major issue. I can account for that myself.
Yeah, me too.
We're just so fortunate to have Cardinal Health System in our vicinity, a regional network, and and just in cases of emergency, it's just great to know that you have some place local that you don't have to go to Indianapolis to get everything done, or other major cities to get some good professional health care provided to you. So I think this is very important. It goes along with quality of life issues that we're talking about that are so important for decisions being made in the areas.
Well, those are all the formal questions I have, but at the end of all of my interviews, I always give my interviewee an opportunity to reflect and perhaps add anything you would like to add at this point as a sort of concluding comment or two.
Well, the thing that I think that is going to be very important to our area is the aspect of regionalism.
Okay.
And I really believe that in order for us to be successful, you see some other parts of the country right now. You talk about the Carolinas with the Triangle, just areas like that. Nothing has become real successful in just one local community. always taken a group effort, you might say, that brings these successes about, to where somehow people learn that different counties can work together.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to rely on past basketball scores.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Yeah.
our level of
Yeah.
involvement with each other. So I think the aspect of regionalism is going to be very crucial to us, and we have a long way to go. I think we're starting to see some of the private sector, some of the regional, like we are considered a regional entity.
Right.
The banks are considered a regional entity. Ball State's considered, in my opinion, a regional
Yeah.
entity. That would really like to kind of see this approach go a little further.
Mhm.
And I think we're taking those tiny first steps right now,
Mhm.
and it just enables us to get to know each other better, to build those relationships,
Mhm.
build the trust levels up, that someday when someone comes up to one another and says, hey, I've got this wild blue sky thought that I thought, we can do this together.
Yeah.
That it will provide us the opportunity maybe to have that come to fruition.
Well, you're on the board of the chamber. Do you think that
Yeah.
is generally shared by your fellow board members?
Overall, no.
Okay.
No. I think it takes being out here in a regional program, knowing how much people in other counties have really in
Mhm.
common,
Yeah.
and some people and one of the problems that Muncie has is that the big, we're not so big that people just give Muncie the benefit of saying, yes, you're the center of the region.
Right.
We're not like a Fort Wayne,
Right.
where there's no question
Yeah.
that you're.
Yeah.
Here we're trying to partner ourselves up with someone like Marion,
Yeah. Right.
Anderson, Richmond,
Mhm.
even things like that, where Muncie just doesn't really stand out that much above and beyond the others. So there are a lot of common issues and
Yeah.
things that
Yeah.
happen to it with all of them, and it's just a matter of maybe getting a lot of those people together.
Well, it seems to me that you have a professor's job here to try to educate your colleagues on the board of something like the chamber that this is perhaps a much smarter way to go over the next decade or so.
Yeah, no doubt more. How you do that though is
Right.
and as much as I hate to say it, we're still, now we're into the 21st century.
Yeah, right.
We still have these basketball things going on.
Yeah,
and, even within the county,
Yeah.
probably, with in thoughts of consolidation and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Consolidation.
hopefully-
Consolidation. To a lot of people, as you well know, is a very frightening prospect.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
But I just think that's going to be the wave of the future.
Yeah.
And I think if we provided ourselves the opportunity to be the pioneers in that at the
Mhm.
beginning, we'd be better off in the long run.
Yeah.
But I just don't see us
Yeah.
at that point yet. More followers than we are
Yeah.
leaders
Yeah.
right now.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and I really appreciate your
Yes.
interview.